The winter rain drummed softly against the tall glass windows of the Sterling Tower, blurring the glittering city lights outside. Inside the 42nd floor office, the air was cold, not from the air conditioning, but from the silence of a man who had forgotten what warmth felt like. Ethan Sterling, the CEO of Sterling Industries, sat behind a mahogany desk surrounded by walls of success, awards, framed contracts, news clippings, all meaningless now. His hands rested on a faded photograph he kept hidden in a drawer. His late wife, Anna, smiling in the summer light, wearing the small golden locket he had given her on their wedding day. That locket had vanished the night of the accident, the night she never came home. If you believe in kindness, miracles, and second chances, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support helps keep these emotional stories alive and reaching more hearts. Every year since her death, Ethan's life had become mechanical. He woke up at 5 a.m., worked until midnight, spoke only when necessary, and smiled never. The employees feared him, the board respected him, and the world admired him, but none of them knew how broken he truly was. His world had ended 5 years ago on a rainy night, when his wife's car was struck by a speeding truck on the bridge just minutes away from home. The police had said she died instantly, but to Ethan, she never really left. She lived in the haunting silence of his penthouse, in the scent of her perfume that lingered in their closet, and in the gold wedding ring he still wore. On a gloomy Tuesday morning, the sound of a child's laughter echoed faintly through the empty hallway outside his office. It was unusual. Children were not permitted on the executive floors. Ethan frowned and glanced toward the door, but before he could call security, there was a soft knock. When the door opened, a young girl, no older than 8, peeked in shyly. She wore a simple pink dress with patches sewn by hand, and her shoes were slightly too big for her small feet. Clutching something in her hand, she looked up at the tall man behind the desk and said softly, "You dropped this, sir." Ethan blinked, momentarily confused. The child stepped closer, extending her tiny palm. Resting in it was a small, familiar glint of gold, a heart-shaped locket, tarnished with time, but unmistakable. The sight of it stole the air from his lungs. For a long, suspended second, the world stood still. He rose abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor, eyes wide with disbelief. It couldn't be. It simply couldn't. That locket had been lost 5 years ago, buried with the wreckage, the police had said. His trembling hand reached for it as if afraid it would vanish if he blinked. The little girl's fingers curled back slightly, hesitant. "My mom found it while cleaning the old storage room in the basement," she said softly. "She said it looked important. I wanted to give it back to you before we left." Ethan's throat felt tight. The child's voice was soft and warm, but all he could hear was the echo of Anna's laughter in his mind, the way she used to say his name. The locket gleamed in the office light, and when he finally opened it, the tiny photograph inside hit him like a storm. It was Anna's face, young, radiant, alive. The same photo he'd taken on their honeymoon. The locket wasn't just an object, it was a piece of the past that had somehow found its way back to him. He struggled to find words, his voice cracking. "What did you say your mother's name was?" The girl tilted her head. "Maria, she's the janitor here. She cleans the top floors every night. We live a few blocks away." That name stirred something faintly familiar in his memory. He had seen it on a roster once, a new hire approved months ago, but never had he noticed her. Why would he? In his world of glass towers and corporate suits, janitors were invisible. Yet now, because of one small act, everything inside him began to shift. That night, Ethan stayed long after everyone left. He couldn't stop thinking about the girl or the locket. His thoughts wandered back to Anna, to the days before he became this cold shell of a man. She had always believed in helping people, always said, "Ethan, kindness doesn't cost a thing, but it buys you peace." He had ignored that lesson, trading compassion for control. Now, a janitor's daughter had reminded him what it felt like to breathe again. The next evening, Ethan waited deliberately until after hours. When the cleaners came through the lobby, he watched from a distance. That's when he saw Maria, mid-30s, hair tied back, wearing a faded uniform, pushing a cleaning cart down the corridor. Her face was tired, but her eyes were gentle, kind. The little girl, Sophie, as he later learned, skipped beside her, humming to herself. It was a simple scene, yet it struck Ethan harder than any business triumph ever had. He approached them quietly. Maria turned, startled, almost dropping her mop. "Sir, I'm sorry, we didn't know anyone was still here." But Ethan raised a hand gently. "It's fine," he said. "You found something that belonged to my wife. I wanted to thank you." His gaze softened as he looked down at Sophie. "And thank you, young lady. You brought me back something I thought I'd lost forever." Maria smiled faintly, glancing at the locket in his hand. "She found it near the old storage shelves," she said softly. "I almost threw it away. But she said it looked special." Sophie nodded proudly. "It had love inside," she said innocently, making Ethan's heart ache in the best possible way. Over the next few weeks, something unexpected began to happen. Ethan found reasons to visit the lower floors, always ending up near the janitorial office. Sometimes he'd bring leftover pastries from meetings for Sophie, who adored them. Sometimes he'd just talk to Maria about ordinary things. The weather, the city, her long work hours. It was strange and almost humbling, how natural it felt to listen, to care again. He learned that Maria was a single mother who had lost her husband 2 years earlier, and that she worked double shifts just to afford Sophie's school fees. He also learned that despite her struggles, she never complained, never asked for help. She simply smiled through everything, much like Anna once had. One rainy night, while Sophie waited in a corner drawing on scraps of paper, Maria cleaned Ethan's office. He sat watching her quietly, the way she moved with diligence and grace, and finally said, "You remind me of someone I once knew." She looked up, puzzled. "Your wife?" she asked softly. Ethan nodded. "She used to say people like you keep the world turning, honest people who work hard even when no one's watching." Maria smiled faintly. Maybe she was right. "But people like you keep the world dreaming. Everyone has their place, sir. We just try to make it through one day at a time." Something about those words settled deep in his heart. That night, as Maria and Sophie left, Ethan sat in the empty office staring at the city lights again. But this time, the silence didn't feel so heavy. He could hear echoes of laughter again, Anna's and now Sophie's. Maybe that was the universe's way of telling him he wasn't done living. Weeks turned into months. The once feared CEO began to change. He smiled more often, spoke kindly to employees, even started new charity programs for underprivileged workers. Rumors spread quickly. Mr. Sterling had changed. But no one knew why. They didn't see the small moments that shaped him, the drawings Sophie made for his desk, the coffee Maria brought when she noticed he skipped dinner, the way their quiet kindness stitched something back together inside him. Then, one afternoon, Sophie wasn't there. Ethan noticed immediately. Maria seemed distracted, her usual calm replaced by worry. When he asked, she hesitated before saying, "She's been sick lately. The doctor said it might be something with her heart. I can't afford the tests yet, so I'm saving up." The words hit him like a cold wind. He had seen enough loss in his life to recognize that look in a parent's eyes, the helpless fear of losing someone you love. That night, without telling her, Ethan made a few calls. By morning, Sophie was admitted to the best pediatric hospital in the city. When Maria arrived panicked, she found Ethan waiting in the hallway. "Why would you—" she began, tears already in her eyes. He interrupted gently. "Because once someone saved my heart. It's time I return the favor." She cried silently then, not from weakness, but from gratitude too big for words. Sophie recovered after surgery, a success story that made the entire hospital smile. And for the first time in years, Ethan laughed. A real, unrestrained laugh that startled even himself. When Sophie hugged him, whispering, "You're like my guardian angel," he felt Anna's presence so strongly that his eyes burned. Maybe she had sent this child into his life, to guide him back toward love and light. Months later, the locket still hung around his neck, no longer a symbol of grief, but of gratitude. Sterling Industries transformed under his leadership, not just in profit, but in purpose. Employees received better benefits, scholarships were funded, and a new foundation was launched, the Anna Sterling Hope Fund, dedicated to helping children of single parents. And when reporters asked what inspired the change, Ethan simply said, "A little girl reminded me that love never really leaves. It just finds new ways to return." If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps us continue sharing stories that remind the world of compassion, hope, and second chances. Before we end, tell us in the comments, what would you do if something from your past found its way back to you when you needed it most? And as the city lights shimmered against the night sky, Ethan watched Sophie and Maria leave the building, hand in hand, laughter echoing through the lobby. For the first time in years, he didn't feel alone. The rain outside no longer sounded like sorrow. It sounded like life. And somewhere deep within him, he finally whispered to the stars, "Thank you, Anna, for sending them to me." Love, it seemed, never truly ended. It only waited to be rediscovered, in a small, gentle voice saying, "You dropped this, sir?